A divisive film, yes, but Vice President Batman, guys, come on. Hello there, people of YouTube, and welcome to the Spikehead podcast for another movie review. And today, with Oscar season in full swing now, I'm going to be talking about one of the most divisive films in the Best Picture category, and that is Vice, directed by Adam McKay, director of one of my favourite films of the last decade, The Big Short, starring Christian Bale, Steve Carell, Amy Adams, and Sam Rockwell. And this film is basically a biopic of the life of Dick Cheney, one of the most iconic names in politics, but also one of the most frightening names. Now, me being British, I only know the name. I don't really know much about him other than he was in American politics. Turns out this guy helped create ISIS and start wars and stopped news publishers from actually being able to be neutral on things, and everything has to be objective. So yeah, divisive film to say the least from what I have heard, though I feel like real world events could be influencing a number of people with their opinion. Me, I like to look at a film as a film on its own, so let's get right into it. For starters, like with The Big Short, they do try and simplify a lot of the big things, and for the most part they do that really well, how they simplify these big events into tiny little examples or little boxes, and showing the flow of Dick Cheney's career from when he's just drinking at a poker table when he's younger, all the way up until his vice presidency. I feel like they executed that element of this film really well with how they explain things. Having a third party talk directly to the camera at certain points is probably one of the smartest parts of this film. It does borrow heavily from The Big Short, where they had people talking to the camera explaining complex things into these simplified scenarios. There are clear breakdowns of what's going on at important parts of history. The discussion between Dick Cheney and George Bush is one of the big things, as well as the discussion shortly before 9/11, which plays a big part of the spine of this. The explanation how ISIS was created, because from my perspective, I thought ISIS just basically came and take over from Al-Qaeda. Turns out, well, from what the film's inferring anyway, it's that's all Dick Cheney's fault. So thank you, Dick, for Manchester. Thank you very much. Let's get into real life. Going back to the film here. The progression of time is really well done. I like how we see Christian Bale go from just Christian Bale all the way to old Bale. Seeing him age through time helps us follow it all the way from the 60s to the mid-2000s to where the film ends. I feel like the way that film flowed and showed this passage of time through a gradual increase in the makeup was really well done. And looking at pictures of the real Dick Cheney and what Christian Bale looks like here, this was spot on. So hats off to the makeup team. They did a fantastic job with this, and they could probably win Best Visual Effects and Makeup at the Oscars. Yeah, it's only for one prosthetic, but hey, Suicide Squad won for the crocodile, and Dark Star, I'm pretty sure, won for just the makeup on Gary Oldman to make him Winston Churchill. I like that's becoming the running theme, taking an iconic political figure and making up these actors look completely different to what they are. That seems to be a running theme in the Oscars over these last couple of years. Now, while there's a few things wrong with this film, I will say it does deliver its message quite well in how it presents itself. I don't know really how to describe it, but I feel like the message it was telling me is that he did bad things. Yeah, Dick Cheney did a lot of bad things, but the American public allowed him to do that. This sequence where the Americans are angry at 9/11 and wanting to blame someone for it, and the way they explain that just attack a terrorist cell rather than the country was more complex, and having to put it onto another country, in which case this time was Iraq, was really well done, I thought, because it's basically a lot of manipulation to the American people, which is obviously something that we don't like our politicians to do, but they are doing it all the time, no matter where in the world they are. And I do like how they explain how they went from just pinning it on one guy to creating a whole nother terrorist cell. That is really clever indeed, I found. Now, while I will say the film had its messages, I will also say that the film did suffer from not getting the full picture of things, because everything over this 5-decade period is simplified down to like 5-minute snippets. His progression from this guy playing poker and drinking it, pulled over by the cops, all the way to he has to be vice president, that's 55 minutes of the film. And it's them going from an internship through to Secretary of Defense and all the other jobs. I'm not a big fan of American politics. I don't know all the different levels of ranking in American politics, but I do know that he works his way up from the bottom, and they do rush through that quite a bit. See, the thing with these sorts of biopics is I want to know the person behind this figure. And with Dick Cheney, I just feel like it's basically an educational piece that's trying to be snappy and edgy. That's all it's really trying to do here. And I don't really get to know Dick Cheney properly. There are bits with his family, of course, but there is very little that you see with him and his family. It's just a lot of them talking politics as well. There's only one or two really personal moments with his family, one of them including his daughter coming out as gay. And to be credited for Dick Cheney, he did take it very well. I'm hoping in real life he did take it very well and did accept it. But he still went into a regime that made it clear that they were against gay rights, but they were happy to keep his daughter out of the picture, and they allowed him to step to one side for that part of the campaign. It's one of those things you have to choose your battles. In this day and age, that's a really scary thing to do. But back then, to get somewhere in politics, you had to let some of your personal feelings go for the sake of the job. And that's how you really separate personal and professional lives, and I feel that was executed really well in this film. But like I said, it does rush through a lot of things, this film, and it does try really hard to be clever. Now granted, since Wolf of Wall Street came out, there's been a lot of these political or financial biopics that have been trying to be snappy and clever to appeal to a wider audience. But with this one, it does feel at times that they are condescending to the audience themselves, which is probably why it's being quite divisive. And there are some bits where the editing is just choppy. The whole stack of cups metaphor, I did not really understand that. It just kind of came out of nowhere. There's a lot of random shots between something going on, cut away to something happening, shot going on, cut away, constantly back and forth. So it does get very choppy, the editing at times. And I will say as much that this film just really had a big pacing issue. I didn't really get to know Dick Cheney himself as a person. Apparently I'm not supposed to know that, but I don't know, I like seeing a film where they give me more of a picture of more than what I can find on Wikipedia. That's all I really want from these kinds of films. Like I said, there's a lot of stopping and starting in this film. There are bits where it does slow down for maybe 5 minutes, but then it will speed into a bunch of montages. It's a choppy film, and compared to The Big Short, it's definitely inferior, I would say, which is a shame because it's got the same director and the same two leading men in this film. But I'm sorry, I just didn't really... I've watched this twice now because the first time was on my all-day marathon and no sleep, and I will be honest, I did fall asleep for the first 40 minutes of this film, and I woke up around the time where his daughter comes out as gay. So I went back, watched it again in full when I was fully awake and caffeinated, and even then I was still at a loss. All this film really told me was that Dick Cheney basically backseat managed the president and inadvertently created ISIS by trying to pin it on someone so America had an excuse to go invade Iraq. So, well done. This film definitely showed me that he's an evil person, but at the same time it feels like he was enabled to do it by a lot of people, the American public and his fellow politicians of the Republican Party. I feel it was definitely one of those films that had its own agenda here, and it doesn't really tell things from a neutral perspective. Because maybe Dick Cheney's a nice guy, sort of, and they do try and play at the end that he has his morals and he always sticks to them, which is a rare thing to find these days if these morals are technically wrong. Generally, I was at a loss for most of this film. Performance-wise, Christian Bale is brilliant as Dick Cheney. I mean, there are occasions where he does have that Batman rasp come out, because he is rasping a lot in this, but I feel like he did a fantastic performance as Dick Cheney. He was very hard to read at all times. He's not a stereotypical villain where he's going to do a maniacal laugh or be all smiley 1 minute and be all stoic the next moment. He is stoic throughout the film, and it is a very facial performance. And considering half the performance is him behind a layer of makeup, that takes a lot of work because you have to move your face muscles a lot more for them to express into the makeup. So that is a really good part of an actor's bio. Steve Carell is fantastic as well. I would say he stole the show in Big Short, but Christian Bale stole it this time around, but Steve Carell is still really good. Just seeing him be this absolute arsehole is brilliant to watch. I feel like Steve Carell is a very underrated actor, and it's great to see that he has long since put past the 40-year-old virgin curse, because in the last year he's been Beautiful Boy, where he was fantastic in this. He was the best part about the sexes. In Big Short, he was really good at it. I love when Steve Carell just plays this asshole character that's really funny. He always likes playing a funny asshole or a serious guy, and I really like that about him. And I hope eventually he'll get his due and get an Oscar one day. Amy Adams as well is really good as Dick Cheney's wife. She does not really get much time to shine in this film, but I will say the scene where she does have to take over from Dick Cheney's campaign to become, I think it's a governor of a county. I think from memory, like I say, it flies through a lot of things in that first half of the film. I thought she was quite good though. I do love Amy Adams. Her performance in the wife is fantastic. And I barely recognised her in this, I'm not going to lie. And it's really good to see that she is still doing good work regardless. Sam Rockwell plays George Bush, and he is good. I'm not going to say he's not bad, but he isn't great. He's definitely the weaker of these four performances, I would say. The fact he's been nominated for Best Supporting Actor, I feel like he's robbed that from Steve Carell a little bit, because he was so much better in Three Billboards, I would say. But Sam Rockwell is still enjoyable, but we just generally don't get that much of him. And that does really throw me off quite a bit when it comes to his character in this movie. Anyway, overall, Vice is a divisive one. And me personally, as a film fan, it is very choppy and clunky. There are good bits in it, but it's kind of all mushed together in a blend. There's no standout scene. There's nothing that's going to blow me away here. Even Christian Bale's performance, I could tell it was a fantastic performance, but it's not like a game-changer performance. It's not like Winston Churchill in Darkest Hour, played by Gary Oldman. It's not Leo DiCaprio in The Wolf of Wall Street. It's not Steve Carell in The Big Short. It's just a very standard performance, and just the choppy editing and the condescending nature it puts towards its viewers at times is also something that is really bugging me about this film. I don't know, this film has me at a loss. It feels like I've seen it twice now, and it took the film 2 hours to basically just say what everyone says anyways, that Dick Cheney was an absolute arsehole, and he still is apparently. Me personally, good performances and some clever beats, but choppy editing, not telling us the full picture, not giving us the person behind this public figure, really knocks the film down for me. I just feel like this film was something that needed a bit more, or a bit more focus, I would say. And I will say for my rating, I'm going to have to say that Vice has too much milk. Honestly, I was interested in this one from the trailers, and I can see why it's divisive, and I don't hate it, but I don't love it either. It's literally just, it needs more, I would say. But with Oscar season coming up, that's another one off my list. What do you all think of Vice? Kindly let me know down in the comments below. And if you enjoy what I do on this channel, feel free to hit that round subscribe button and see any of my other reviews over here. And my next review will most likely be How to Train Your Dragon: The Hidden World. Guys, thank you so much for watching. This is that Spikehead Podcast, signing off.